events. Legendary amongst these were the matches between the Dutch and the British teams, who competed against each other from 1921 onwards in the Lensbury Club. They were known as the Olympiads. The management made sure there were impressive cups for the winners. When the Dutch lost the Olympiads for the second time in 1922, Deterding decided to buy the sports complex Ter Werve in Rijswijk near the company's headquarters in The Hague. The facilities of the Royal Dutch Sports Club became comparable to those of Lensbury. It was a popular meeting place for employees. They played sports, had staff and children's parties, and entertained foreign guests. However, differences between the British and the Dutch remained within the Royal Dutch Shell Group. The British were the transporters, the traders, the managers, while the Dutch excelled in technical and engineering skills. Over the years, Royal Dutch and the Technical University of Delft built a strong relationship together. The university even awarded Deterding an honorary doctorate in 1928, and Prince Hendrik of the Netherlands attended the ceremony. By the end of the 1920s, the oil industry had suffered severely from continuous overproduction in America. The leading oil companies reached an agreement at Achnacarry Castle in Scotland. They made a pledge not to start a price war which would cause upheaval in each other's markets. In 1929, the whole world was in severe economic crisis after the Wall Street crash. The oil companies had a very difficult time, especially in the United States and the Dutch East Indies. Drastic reorganizations and mass redundancies followed. In the Dutch Antilles on Curaçao, the crisis hit hard. Half the population worked in the oil industry or in related businesses. As a result of the economic crisis, extremist and nationalist political movements gained support. It vigorously resisted the nationalizing of its holdings. During the company took a more middle-of-the-road approach. Instead of objecting to nationalism in principle, the group held out for as long as possible by negotiating using subtle arguments. There was a public outcry when Italy started war in Abyssinia, now known as Ethiopia. Shell did not support a call to boycott Italy, but at the same time refused to supply the Italian government with the extra oil they demanded for warfare. In the Spanish Civil War, the group took a similar neutral position. The biggest threat emerged in Germany when Hitler came to power in 1933. Under the Nazi regime, the oil industry gradually came under the grip of Field Marshal Hermann Göring. Just like other companies, the German arm of Shell, Renania-Ossag, finally adapted to the new order. In spite of the German government's interference, the directors of the group tried to run the business as usual. In the end, Shell lost control over Renania-Ossag when the Nazis installed their own administrator.
From the beginning, Henri Deterding had been a strong leader for Royal Dutch Shell. But times were changing and Deterding was struggling. The charismatic leader was slowly becoming an autocratic, suspicious ruler. And Deterding was a committed anti-communist and had strong sympathies for the new Nazi Germany.
Deterding came into conflict with his fellow directors when his political opinions influenced his ability and judgment. He retired in June 1936 with a big farewell party to celebrate his 40 years with Royal Dutch Shell and his 70th birthday.
Wat ik wel wil zeggen is dit, dat er maar één geluk in de wereld is, en dat is het geluk van arbeid. Nog groter geluk is mogelijk en in de positie te zijn arbeid te kunnen geven.
Deterding died in St. Moritz on February the 4th, 1939. The Nazis were noticeably present at his funeral in Mecklenburg, and they commemorated Deterding as a great friend of Germany. The final years of Henri Deterding had marred his reputation. In spite of this, he still belongs in the top echelon of great international company leaders of the 20th century. He was, and remains, the man who made the Royal Dutch Shell Group a huge success. His succession caused friction between the British and the Dutch directors. In the end, Frits de Kock became the Director General of Royal Dutch and officially the head of the group. De Kock wanted to bridge the growing gap between the British and the Dutch, so he changed the existing team of managing directors into a collective of directors, which he then led as a first amongst equals.
Autumn 1939, the Second World War was already underway, and a great part of Europe would be conquered by the Germans. To prevent the Dutch side of the company falling into German hands, Royal Dutch decided they must move into exile. They placed their company seat in Curaçao, they moved a core staff to London, and they placed many of their tankers under the British flag. Hitler then started to heavily bomb Britain, trying to make it surrender, but in vain. Now, Dr. Jonker, can you explain to me the main developments that took place in the Shell Group in the decades running up to the Second World War?
Well, the 1930s were years of great contrast for the group between the massive redundancies of the economic crisis of the early 1930s and an expansion with new refineries and processing facilities in the second half of the 1930s. And the second big contrast was between exciting new products such as iso-octane on the one hand, and increasing political difficulties with regimes around the world, in Mexico, in Germany, in Italy, and Japan.
And was there any one strategic decision that stands out above all others?
Yes, absolutely. That's the 1927 decision to turn to petrochemicals, because that's what led the way to iso-octane and synthetic rubber, the two key products during World War II.
And what about this character, Henri Deterding? Because he had something of a stained reputation by this stage.
Yes, unfortunately so. But we must not forget that he was instrumental in keeping the group together, and that became evident immediately after his resignation in 1936, when British and Dutch directors started an infectious row with each other.
From challenger to industry leader. After the initial merger in 1907, Royal Dutch and Shell Transport and Trading developed their joint business into a strong worldwide oil company. It was a story of rapid expansion in exploration and production, leading-edge research and the development of new products. Its success created a group of dynamic and resilient companies in many countries.